So, hello and welcome to this ARMA webinar on the transformation of musculoskeletal services. My name's Sue Brown and I'm the Chief Executive of the Arthritis and Musculoskeletal Alliance, ARMA. We're an umbrella body that brings together patient groups and professionals to work for better services for people with MSK conditions. Before we get started, I'm just going to find out who we've got on the webinar today. So I'm just launching a poll. So those of you who are in the Zoom app should see a poll on your screens now. If you could just give us an idea of what your role is and also where you work, just so that we know who we have on the call. So ARMA's really keen to and pleased to be supporting this webinar because we've been supporting the introduction of first contact MSK practitioners for some time. But we also think that to get the best out of your FCP, you need access to a good range of musculoskeletal services that are organised in a coherent and an integrated way. So we are hoping that today you will get something out of hearing from people who have implemented FCP in the context of wider MSK transformation, and that you'll be able to learn from their experiences. So thank you to everyone who has voted in that polling, just giving us an idea, and you should be able to see the results on the screen. So we have about 2/3 of you are based in England, but we also have some Scotland and some other. And we've got the two biggest groups on the line are commissioners and managers of services, but we've also got quite a lot of first contact MSK practitioners and quite a lot of physiotherapists who are not currently working as FCPs. So that's who we have. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Debbie Crerar and Jennifer Mulvey from the Midlothian Health and Social Care Partnership. Over to you.
So I'll just get the screen up just now. Hi, my name is Debbie Crerar and I am the lead physiotherapist for Midlothian. I've got my colleague Jenny Mulvey beside me here, and over the last 18 months or so, we've led a process of transformation across musculoskeletal physiotherapy in Midlothian. Jenny and the team really supported me to make a lot of changes to try and get the service to where it is today. So we hope to give you an overview of the journey that we've been on, some of the challenges along the way, an insight into where we are now and our plans for the future. So I think it's safe to say that things had to change for multiple different reasons. We had to start to look to do things differently. Services were becoming unsustainable, staff morale was low, waiting times were increasing by the moment, and the quality of service on offer to our patients wasn't great. The difficulty is that when you're caught in the revolving door, it can be really hard to break free. And when you're faced with waiting list pressures, a growing caseload, and a diary that barely gives you time to breathe, then it becomes really difficult to take a step back and give time to make change happen. And that has to be recognised. The staff on the ground need the time, the support, the confidence and the skills to make a difference and to make change happen. The alternative is that you keep on going and nothing improves. So I thought it might be useful just to tell you a little bit about Midlothian. Midlothian lies to the south of the city of Edinburgh. There are about 90,000 people in population. We are the second smallest local authority in mainland Scotland, but we are the fastest growing. I think on average across Scotland, the population is growing at about 6%, whereas in Midlothian, it's growing by about 14%. Between 1997 and 2017, the population rose by 13%, and it's expected to keep going. By about 2026, we're expecting our population to be over 100,000 people. So we had to do something a little bit different. We have got areas of deprivation in 4 areas of Midlothian. 2 of those are identified as being areas of concern. And this does pose a bit of a challenge for all our health and social care services, whilst changing the face of some of our local communities as well. There is a little bit of a theory, and I don't know whether this is grounded in science or not, but there is a bit of a theory that demographically, Midlothian is representative of a mini Scotland. The theory goes that if a service can work in Midlothian, then it should be able to be scaled up to work nationally. Again, I don't know whether there's any science behind that, but it's useful to know. The advantage of working here, the advantage of our area is that we're small, so it's easy to get the right people around the table to make change happen. The disadvantage of Midlothian is that we're small, so building resilient services can be challenging. Healthcare in Scotland is devolved. Following the introduction of the integration agenda, there are 31 health and social care partnerships, and we're one of them. And the common purpose is to deliver better health and wellbeing outcomes for its population. Midlothian Health and Social Care Partnership brings together parts of Midlothian Council and NHS Lothian, and it's governed by an integrated joint board. So services that were at once primarily NHS or primarily Midlothian Council are working together to try and provide a more joined up delivery of care. So I think it's useful to know that when you're looking to make changes, this is what is the structure in your area. So I'm going to take you back to 2017. I wasn't actually in post at this time, but there was a recognition that the services that we had within physiotherapy had to change quite dramatically. Waiting lists were increasing. There was a feeling that there was no clinical leadership or professional leadership. There wasn't really anyone within the MSK service that was above a band 6. With minimal data, minimal service improvement, staff morale was absolutely through the floor. It was low, and management really wanted to do things differently. And at the same time, there was a bit of a crisis going on in GP land, and recognition was beginning to build that AHPs did have a role to play in that solution. I was appointed in January 2018, but at this point, all the physiotherapy services were being managed elsewhere. Again, I think that's one of the challenges that we face, that little pockets of services are being managed in different areas. So when you're trying to look at a pathway and across the full pathway, it can be really, really difficult to coordinate everything that's going on. One of my first jobs was to look at the MSK service and to bring it back into Midlothian. It was being managed elsewhere, and we had to look at bringing that back to our area so that we could start to influence and affect change more locally. We had minimal data at this time, but the data that I could get gave us a bit of a picture. Now, the reason that there's no numbers on this graph is what I do know is that the data wasn't that accurate, but it did give a trend of increasing waiting times. How big that increase and what those actual numbers were, at that point we weren't 100% sure, but we knew it was definitely moving in the wrong direction. And it was clear that it had been going on for a long time. I managed to get data-ish, I say data of a sort, back to November 2016, but I suspect that it has been increasing from before that point as well. The staff were working flat out, morale was non-existent, and I'd say things couldn't keep going on like that. By the June, I was then managing the service. The service became my responsibility. And it wasn't a pretty picture. We had 50% clinical staff vacancies, absolutely no administrative support, so staff were making their own appointments, incredibly low staff morale. Our routine appointment time for MSK had hit 39 weeks by this point. Patients weren't happy, GPs, consultants, it wasn't satisfactory for anybody. So at this point, what did we do? It was nothing rocket science at this point. It was really, again, trying to bring the service back locally. So we brought it under local management. It became under my responsibility. We filled the vacancies. We supported the staff that were in the ground. We listened, we trained, we started talking to each other, which hadn't really been going on, involved the staff in the work that was going on, and really tried to meet the needs of the staff, the needs of the patients, and make it a service that staff had ownership of and had a bit of responsibility for. At the same time, we were also looking to introduce GP APPs, or first contact practitioners. Now, you'll be well aware that there's a bit of debate about what the name of first contact practitioners are. In Scotland, they tend to be referred to as APPs because they're all band 7 or above, but I know that that's slightly different in England. So if I'm talking about a GP APP or a first contact practitioner, I am meaning the same thing. By the September, we had no vacancies. We'd established a band 5 rotation so that we were starting to expose staff to different areas of physiotherapy and really get staff as experienced as we could. We had a telephone line, which sounds ridiculous, but when you've got clinical staff answering their own phone calls from patients, it does take away from clinical time. They either have to leave a patient that they're with, or they leave a patient on the phone, and again, that's not satisfactory for anybody. Our admin support was in place and being trained at this point, and the waiting list was starting to come down. So at this point, we didn't have any extra staff and we didn't have any extra capacity. We were just putting little bits and pieces in place to make things easier. We had a robust CPD plan in place. Again, training had been stopped because the staff were so busy, they felt they couldn't take the time out of their day. Staff began to get involved in the decisions affecting the service. Again, introduced team meetings again. Staff felt that when things were really, really busy, then the team meetings and CPD were the first things to go. But actually, as soon as they go, the service becomes less effective rather than more effective. And staff morale at this point was starting to improve. By the October, our waiting times had dropped down to 23 weeks. And by the March, so less than a year later, our waiting times for MSK had come down to 6 weeks. At the same time, as I say, in a galaxy far away, and I use this slide quite a lot because within MSK, we're really rubbish at talking to people out west, or we have been in the past really rubbish at talking to people out west. I've worked in MSK for almost 20 years now, and through the first years, until I came into this role, didn't really speak to a GP unless there was an issue. So it wasn't shared ownership of patients, it wasn't shared responsibility for their care. It was either, if they were in the GP surgery, it was the GP's responsibility. If they were in physiotherapy, it was their responsibility. But if we didn't know what to do with them, that was okay, because we could send them back to the GP. And again, it's not really a good way of working. Patients were bouncing round and round the health service and not really moving forward. So in primary care, we had a bit of a crisis looming that I think everybody will be aware of, and is not a shock to everybody that GPs were struggling. And there's a bit of debate online about whether first contact physiotherapy is about the GP crisis or whether it's about the right person seeing the patient at the right time. And I think it's a little bit of both. I think that the fact the GP crisis brought it forward, that physiotherapists can do this, is a great thing. But I think going forward, it is very much about the fact that MSK physiotherapists can see, assess, diagnose and treat MSK patients without the need for GP involvement a lot of the time. But this media campaign, if you like, just brought it to the fore a little bit quicker than perhaps it would have done otherwise. So I'm going to pass you over to Jenny, who's going to tell you a little bit about how we introduced our APP service, our first contact service, and then we'll talk a little bit about our core MSK service, because it's really, really important that people don't think of the first contact service as the magic cure. It's really important that they realise that you can't have one without the other if you want services to be effective. And actually, you need pathways further on as well. We won't quite go into that today, but it's really, really important to have oversight of what the whole MSK pathway is, and not just your tiny corner of it.
Hi there. My name is Jenny Mulvey. I'm a first contact practitioner in one of the GP practices in Midlothian, and I also have a small caseload within the core physiotherapy team. So I'm going to talk about how we implemented first contact practice within Midlothian and the impact that this work has had on the wider MSK team. So as Debbie was mentioning, the initial drivers for this was really a lot to do with the issues the GPs were facing. So 50% of the Midlothian GP practices were operating with restricted lists. There's a recognition that existing models of care were unsustainable. There was dissatisfaction with the existing service on offer. And again, as Debbie was saying, this ever-increasing population in Midlothian, there's new housing developments springing up everywhere, coupled with the fact that, as we know, it's an ageing population. So this was looked at a kind of new service to try and introduce. So from the start, these were permanent posts at a minimum band 7 level. There was a strong belief from the health board that these roles were going to work. They were supported at all levels of the organisation. It had already been agreed that they needed to be a minimum of band 7 due to the level of uncertainty and risk involved in these roles. And as I say, it was agreed there was a minimum of 2 sessions per week per GP practice initially. So we had quite a sort of slow lead-in time, 6 to 8 weeks, to give us time to get to know what the role was, gave us time to shadow colleagues and GPs. We completed our IRMA training and competencies and training of the admin staff, which is really, really important. As an advanced practitioner post, the roles needed to encompass the 4 pillars of practice, and we needed to have time in our day to be able to do that. So it's not all just clinical work, but included sort of education of the core MSK team, the wider physio community and other sort of health professionals. So we're making sure that we try to cover all these bases and comply with clinical governance. And lastly, these are physio-led roles. So we're employed by the health board, not the GP. So things like annual leave and how we run our diaries, that's all decided within our own team as opposed to through the GPs. So the strategic principle of this work was to redirect appropriate patients from the general practice to the first contact physiotherapy practitioner. So what did we do? So at the beginning there was 3 of us, the 3 FCPs, which equated to 1.9 full-time equivalent. So we started in 3 GP practices. There's 12 in total in Midlothian. And these were practices who had shown an interest and were deemed to be, as we said, at crisis point. We worked really closely with the admin and clerical staff and the practice manager. It's really important that they know what your role is, so that they're giving you, signposting you appropriate patients. So we're not a physiotherapist in a GP practice, but that we're an alternative to a GP. We offered a 20-minute brief face-to-face appointment as an alternative to a GP appointment. We record our notes in the same way as the GPs do. So we use their computer system, which is either EMIS or Vision. There are various models being used around the country for STP and actually even within Midlothian, but we're finding that the 20-minute appointment, that works well for us and is working well for GPs. So ideally, patients are seen on the day or within 48 hours of contacting the practice. We're aiming for the majority of the patients to be triaged by reception, but probably that's about maybe 50-50, so that's still needing some work. We assess, diagnose and decide on appropriate way forward, whether that be advice and exercises, referring on to the core MSK team, referring for x-ray or onward referral to secondary care. 4 of us do steroid injections, so that's something that we can offer. There's 3 of us that are qualified in non-medical prescribing, another 2 of us who are currently doing the training for that. So prescriptions would mainly be for anti-inflammatories, maybe simple painkillers. There's ongoing limitation of not being able to prescribe codeine-based products, mainly cocodamol, which is the main day-to-day painkiller that the GPs use for MSK problems. But I think that's something the CSP are working on and is currently being discussed at government levels. The government of these roles seems to be constantly evolving. So in Scotland, we have NEF, which is NHS Education Scotland, So they have lots of really good resources that we can use for advanced practice. So they have, for example, the MSK Advanced Practice Framework, which covers a range of competencies that you can be hopefully working at or working towards. There's the NEST Career Framework, and there's also something that we call the Advanced Practice Toolkit, which again has lots of resources for people either in advanced practice or looking to work towards that. And we also have local agreements to each of the GP practices regarding different scenarios. So for example, if patient needs blood, you feel they need blood taken, or you want them reviewed for their GP, then those are local policies that might differ depending on which GP practice that you're working at. I've discussed some of this already, but essentially, first contact practitioners, we can assess for red flags, assess to diagnose the problems, give patients advice and exercises. We're always promoting self-management. We can have discussions regarding fitness to work. As I said, we do injection therapy, we can refer for x-rays, give out splints, refer for your traditional physiotherapy, promote structured physical activity, and signpost to other services. So what have we learned through introducing these posts? Really important that the admin staff and the GPs are aware of what we do and how to correctly signpost to us. I do find when maybe a new locum starts that less appropriate patients can start creeping into my diary, and usually that's because they're thinking we're doing the physiotherapy and we're going to give them a course of physiotherapy, which isn't really how we want the service to work. We want patients to be coming and understanding that we're an alternative to GP, and if they need physio, we can refer them to that, because otherwise it's just frustrating for everyone concerned if they're coming in and we're just referring them on again. Advanced skills such as injection therapy and the non-medical prescribing, they're definitely not essential, but they are useful and they seem to be appreciated by the GPs. And it's really important that we have a strong core MSK service and links to the MSK team so that we're able to discuss patients, refer on, and be confident that they're going to provide really good quality rehab to patients. So essentially what we've learned is that advanced physiotherapy practitioners can successfully manage MSK conditions in primary care as an alternative to a GP. So what is it not? Debbie has touched on this. So it's definitely not a magic wand to cure the GP crisis. We're not a substitute for GPs. As I mentioned, we're not the practice physiotherapy giving a course of treatment, and it's not the same as self-referral.
I think that's really important, that there's quite a bit of misconception that this is just self-referral, but I think we need to remember that self-referral is people who know that they need physiotherapy. They are making the decision themselves that they need to go to physiotherapy. First contact practitioners within a GP practice, the people that attend there think they need a GP appointment, so they're never going to they're never going to self-refer to physio. So I think it is really, really important that that's differentiated.
Yeah. So where are we now? So from January 2020, every GP practice in Midlothian will have a minimum of 2 sessions per week of GP first contact practitioners. Staffing, so we have Debbie, who's the one full-time equivalent band 8A lead, she does 0.2 clinical work. And we have, as you can see, 5.9 full-time equivalent band 7 GP APPs or FCPs. More patients are being seen by the right person in the right place, and within days of presenting to their GP surgery, and sometimes even on the same day. There's definitely more appropriate onward referrals and improved use of the Lothian MSK pathways. There had been in Lothian a bit of a problem with inappropriate knee patients being referred to secondary care, so they started redirecting, orthopaedics have started redirecting those referrals back to physiotherapy if they haven't been seen at physio, which is obviously frustrating for everyone concerned, patients thinking that they're going to be seen by orthopaedics only to be referred back to physio. So we're hopefully more aware of these pathways than the GPs are and sending more appropriate patients. So as I said, we've got 3 qualified non-medical prescribers, a further 2 that are undergoing the training. One member of staff has completed a career fellowship on the implementation of FCP, and that's now being progressed to doctorate level. We're working with the local HEIs to deliver mentorship and training for students. We've helped support other areas to implement their FCP service. And there's a strong ongoing focus on training and development, both for ourselves and for the MSK Physiotherapy team. So a few stats for you. So since April 2018, we've seen over 10,000 patients. They've accessed timely physiotherapy within their local GP surgery. Onward referral rates are low. So up to 90% of patients who are seen by FCP require no onward referral or input. Requests for further investigations are less than 1%. And through sort of patient satisfaction questionnaires that we've done, patient satisfaction seems to be really, really high. So we're happy with how the service has been running at the moment. A couple more points ahead. So we've learned that patients, they don't want to really be attending appointments. Most people want to know what's wrong, what to do, how long it's going to take to get better, and what to do if it doesn't get better. That's really why they're coming to a GP. We don't have any cover for annual leave, so during time of leave, there'll be more of a wait to access physiotherapy, but otherwise most people are seen, as I say, in really quite a timely manner. So I'll just move on to what the role of the core MSK physio team is now. So within Midlothian, it's really a very small team that's operating across quite a large area, so that in itself brings challenges. There's 4 physiotherapy departments within Midlothian. In terms of staffing, 3.4 whole-time equivalent band 6, 2 whole-time equivalent band 5, 1 full-time equivalent band 4, and then we have 1.2 A&C support. So up until recently, we only had 1 admin person managing the waiting list and appointments. So every time she was on holiday, the waiting list increased. So although it's a small team, it's definitely an essential team. And it's important to keep it resilient, because without that team, patients would get poorer quality of service, and primary care would be struggling more. It's important, I think, to talk about what the difference is. So the core MSK Physiotherapy team provides the ongoing rehab for patients with MSK conditions in Midlothian. The team will see people over a number of appointments to support their rehab, as opposed to just a one-off appointment. We want to keep the FCP service sort of open and flexible without significant wait for access, so people can get early assessment advice before their condition becomes more complex. And you can't really do that if you don't have a good sort of quality MSK service that we can, as FCPs, we're able to refer into. So what has changed? The introduction of FCP has helped improve the pathway for the right person to be seen within physiotherapy. Physiotherapists are now seeing appropriate patients that actually need rehab. So we're finding there's fewer one-off appointments because patients are needing to come for longer to have that good rehab. Although the number of referrals entering the service has reduced, the average number of appointments required by patients is expected to go up for that reason. Staff have reported an improved standard of referral, better joined-up care for their patients, and easier access to senior support. Our iMatter score for staff satisfaction in this service is more than doubled. And we're hopeful that DNA rates will reduce and patient contacts will increase, but we haven't actually analysed that data yet, so no data to show on that at this point. So when we first started in the FCP roles, all the money was really, and funding was for FCP, and there was very little or no extra funding really for the core MSK service. So we had to sort of look at different ways that we could improve the service without money, essentially. So training, all staff were funded with a small pot of money to attend a strength and conditioning course. We had a robust CPD plan was implemented. Staff have all attended in-house difficult conversation training, health literacy, and training on the MSK pathway, so they're referring the right patients. All staff have been offered leadership training, and we have regular peer-to-peer clinical supervision, and there's a professional forum which has been established.
Because I managed the budget for both services, it meant any time we did have a vacancy, I was able to use that money to reinvest it back into into the team. So it was really, really important that any time a little glimmer of hope could be found from a staff vacancy was actually we could fund some training for the team that were in place.
So through that small amount of money, we now had laptops, gym equipment was purchased, and from a staff point of view, staff were given control of their own diary, times in their working day to sort of do these extra jobs. One of the core roles, or one of the main roles for the MSK team is management of long-term conditions. So supporting those patients in the management of their MSK conditions. And this includes, education, introducing coping strategies, again, the rehab, and flare-up management. In terms of workforce planning, there's obviously been all these advanced practitioner jobs are sort of coming up all the time now, so there's not really enough physiotherapists, certainly in Scotland, to fill these advanced practice posts. Therefore, staff within the core MSK team need to be upskilling with a view to developing into advanced practice posts or FCP posts. As a risk of destabilisation of the core MSK service, as experienced staff move into the new GP or FCP roles or advanced practice roles, it's leaving, potentially a group of staff who are really quite inexperienced within the sort of core MSK team. So we need to provide training routes and career progression for all. There's questions around that. So how do we expose students to the role or the FCP role? Can we make better training opportunities and progression for staff? So we're continually trying to work on this and improve and develop services around this. So the emphasis now is on high quality rehab service. So the FCP staff are working closely with the MSK core staff to ensure rehab principles are being utilised. As we mentioned, staff have been funded on the strength and conditioning course. We're trying to build links with community exercise classes. And staff being supported to attend sort of leadership and quality improvement courses and do projects linked around them. So this last slide is a summary of our first 10 months or so in operation. So the top bit is showing the sort of start of the FCP posts and then the gradual increase in staff that were recruited into those posts. And then the bottom part of it is just showing the change in the MSK waiting list. So just showing that it had steadily kind of reduced.
Sorry, will you finish?
Yeah, no, yeah, pretty much.
So I'll go cover a little bit about the challenges that we've had along the way. Really, it is important to say that there wasn't one thing that sorted this. It's been lots of little things and lots of challenges along the way. So much to do, so little time, and I think we all face that and we all understand that. Negotiating the world of integration was quite a tricky one because we had some services that were still NHS Lothian and some services that had moved into their health and social care partnership, and actually trying to align those could be quite tricky. I've developed master negotiating skills, I think, over the last while. Lots of difficult conversations, lots of really trying to meet everyone's needs. Everyone has a view on how this should be done, from the GPs to the managers, up to the senior managers up top, to the physios on the ground, to other areas. And actually building a service that meets the needs of everyone is really, really tricky. But I suppose for me, just keeping the patient at the centre of it and thinking what is best for the patient has been what's driven me forward. Finding the workforce, as Jenny said, everybody's crying out for physios at the moment. There's not quite enough of us to go around. Hopefully that will catch up, but at the moment we do still have gaps. Finding appropriate training, particularly in Scotland. So we're trying to establish a service back in April that nobody was really sure what the role was. And nobody was really sure what the training requirements were. So building a service from scratch with a new role was really, really tricky. And the governance around that as well, making sure that these posts were safe, effective, and that they weren't being exposed to unnecessary risks. And an ongoing challenge is funding for core MSK. I feel that service needs to be built up rather than stripped back, and that's still on my agenda to look at how I bring more funding into the core MSK service. But when you see the feedback that we've had from patients over the last while, I was in a position where I was able to see the feedback when I first came into the post, and it wasn't pretty. So getting this feedback from patients and patients' surveys that were coming back with 100% satisfaction, it really shows that we are doing something right. So I quite often get asked what is the best bit of advice that I could give to anybody that is looking to set up a service like this. And I think this is the best bit of advice that I have, is just start by working through the tasks that you absolutely need to do. What are the things you need to do to get by? Then look at what are the possibilities, and then suddenly you find that things are happening that you didn't quite think you could ever do and ever achieve. So just work through it slowly, gently. Don't come in with any firm plans of, I am going to do this and I am going to build this. Actually do it slowly, systematically, and in the right way, so not with an agenda, and you'll find that actually things do come together. So moving forward, you think that would be the end of the story, and it's not. As with anything in the NHS, it's not quite the end of the story yet. So our core MSK service is a service with only a small number of people in it. We've had 2 vacancies for some time. So in a tiny service, 2 vacancies has a big impact. So we've seen waiting times rise again. So our current challenges are the vacancies within the core MSK team. So the waiting times rising again. Although we have, according to our primary care improvement plan, we are fully staffed within our first contact service. However, when the initial proposals for the service were drawn up, they didn't understand the role, we didn't understand the role, and as our service grows and develops, I think we need one full-time equivalent to meet this demand. I've got the funding for that, but it's finding the staff to do that. So all our initial paperwork and all our initial proposals were drawn up by somebody who wasn't a physiotherapist, and they had no allocation for additional training. It was purely clinical roles. And I say, because I've been quite firm that we need to have these within the roles, I've been quite protective of that time and haven't spread the service so thin, so that we clinically are meeting the demand of all the GP practices. So I think we need to protect our physios. So at the moment I do have another one full-time equivalent funding, but it's finding the staff to fill that post. We've also got issues within Midlothian that we have a high proportion of people attending A&E with MSK conditions, so that is a challenge. You know, that to me says we've still got work to do. I manage the MSK service. If our patients with MSK conditions are going elsewhere because for whatever reason, whether it's they can't access the service or whether it's they think that's the right thing to do, we need to look at changing that. And as I mentioned already, there are still a bit of a lack of training opportunities in Scotland. I have funded our FCPs to go to a number of courses down south, but I'd like to see more happen locally. So over the next wee while, we've got a couple of projects underway. The first one is looking at our referrals within our MSK list. So for our routine physiotherapy wait, still 30% of our referrals on our routine waiting list are coming from a GP, which in some ways is great, only 30%, because at one point it would have been up at 80%. So 30% of our referrals is good, but I think we can get that better. And 16% of our referrals are coming from NHS 24. So that's 46% of our patients who are sitting on our waiting list who have still not seen a physiotherapist while they wait for input. So our plan is to use Attend Anywhere, which is a video conferencing system, to offer anybody who's not seen a physiotherapist who's referred into the service a video consultation to see if we can give them some earlier advice while they wait, and again just see what the impact of that is. We'll do screening for serious pathology over the phone, over the video conferencing. We will give them advice, education management, and then discuss options of whether they stay on the waiting list or whether they go on hold, or whether they feel actually that's all they need. So we're looking to really try and reduce the people that need the face-to-face contact, so that the people who stay on the waiting list are absolutely the ones that need physiotherapy. We do believe a number of people will opt out of a face-to-face appointment, and all going to plan this trial will be up and running in February. And we're also doing, actually I don't actually have a slide for, we're doing a bit of work with our Flow Hub, who have oversight of tracking all patients in Midlothian, and A&E, our acute colleagues, to see whether we can put a first contact practitioner who doesn't have a caseload into our local community hospital to redirect patients from A&E, so that we can really try and capture those patients. So again, all going to plan. That should be up and running, that trial later this year as well. So again, what I suppose I really wanted to highlight is that if you think you're at the end of sorting the problems, you're not. The NHS is ever evolving, and we need to just keep looking at the what's next, and what do our patients need to try and do things a little bit differently, and to try and make things as best as they can be for us. And the last thing we've got is as we don't have an awful lot of training opportunities, we've got to do it ourselves. So we have organised a study day and a networking day for the 14th of May. We've got, I think, so far 5 confirmed speakers, and hopefully it will be a good opportunity for first contact practitioners within Scotland to come along and share ideas, learn from each other, and actually speak to each other, which I think in physio for a long time we stopped talking to each other, and that's when a lot of the issues came about. So that is me finished, and Jenny finished. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
That's great. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Really interesting and useful presentation. We've got a few mostly quite practical, detailed questions, but do keep your questions coming. So the first one is the $64,000 question. Are there enough Band 7, 8 MSK physios in the UK to cover the FCP requirement? I know you already mentioned the importance of the kind of workforce planning and the staff development. Is there anything else you wanted to say on that?
Yeah, I think at the moment there's probably not enough, but I think a lot of people have been in a position where they've become a little bit stuck. So I think we need to make sure that we are training our Band 6s, that we're supporting our Band 6s to move up the ladder. And I think, as I said, when things get really busy, CPD and meetings are the first thing to go, and that's when the staff stop training. So that's when we lose that opportunity for people moving up to the Band 7 level. So I think as long as we keep things moving forward and keep supporting, training and developing our staff, it will come. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we have enough just yet. And I would say that's when people need to start, again, just looking at what's the gold standard, what is the best they can hope for, and then if they can't do that, what's the next step down, and what's the next step down from that, whether it's looking at hub models of care, whether it's looking at again, just what works in their area to do things a little bit differently.
Okay, and certainly for those who are on the line from England, I know that there's a huge amount of work happening in England around the workforce planning, the training offers, and also potentially professions other than physiotherapy doing the FCP role. So at the moment, I think they're looking at osteopaths and podiatrists as possible FCPs. But yes, it is I think the answer to that question is probably not yet. So a few more kind of quick factual questions. So you said you're the smallest area in Scotland. Do you know what your population size is roughly?
Yeah, it's about 90,000. So I think we're the second smallest, 90,000, and but due to increase to over 100,000 in the next 6 years.
Okay,
so
great.
it's over the last while.
Yeah, and do your follow-up appointments last 20 minutes as per the initial appointment?
So within our first contact service, all our appointments are 20 minutes regardless. So if a patient, we don't make follow-up appointments within the first contact service. If they need ongoing input, they'll be referred into the core MSK service. Within the core MSK service, their initial appointments are 45 minutes and then their follow-ups are 30.
Okay, and I think that's answered the next question, which was around when you talk about core MSK, is this similar to our core physiotherapy team, or is it about triaging?
No, it will be similar to their core physiotherapy team. That's the team that does the ongoing rehab. That's the team that that will bring them in for a course of physiotherapy. Within the first contact team, we describe it as a brief intervention. So we try and deal with everything that we can within that appointment. So if we can stop the patient hitting another service unnecessarily, we will. But if they need ongoing input, they'll be referred into the core service for that.
Okay. The next one is, did you have any problems with radiation protection rules and non-medical referrals policies for imaging access?
Not really, no. I suppose the biggest challenge was that there was lots of changing roles at that time, so they were slightly inundated with requests. Yeah. But Lothian have had advanced practitioners working within their musculoskeletal pathways for a number of years now, so a lot of the protocols and policies were already in place and were able to be adopted from there or slightly adjusted from there. So I'd say that the biggest challenge was that they were inundated with requests, so there was a bit of a time lag. But other than that, no, there wasn't any challenges.
I think it's very recognised now that these roles are about and they're going forward, and you know, being able to refer for X-rays is definitely part of that role. So you know, shouldn't really be too much of a question about whether that happens or not in terms of the armour training.
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions about the active video service. So is it are you planning to use a specific model? Is it something you've designed specifically for the purpose? Is it purely web-based? Can you say a little bit more about that?
So we're using Attend Anywhere, which is a recognised platform, if you like, for managing video consultations within the health centre, within the health setting. It has been trialled across NHS Scotland in a number of different areas. It's often used in rural areas where we have some hospitals where to go to an appointment, which might just be a checkup appointment, is you know, a 6-hour round journey. So it is used a lot in the rural areas. We know that active referral clinical triage is going on in Glasgow within secondary care between physiotherapy and the orthopaedic team, and they found that they used a telephone call rather than the video conferencing, and found that a great proportion of the patients, when they got the telephone call and a robust discussion about their needs, that they didn't need to, the patient then made the decision that they didn't want to be seen with an orthopaedic. So there's not much more to tell about it at the moment, other than we have got all the sort of the policy and procedural stuff cleared now, and we will be trialling it in February to see whether we can make an impact on our waiting times or not. So it's a bit of watch this space and see what happens.
Okay, and then we've got questions coming in about the relationship between the core MSK team and the FCPs, and do people work in both? So people who are saying they are proposing a similar service, but where people would work 3 days in a GP practice and 2 days in a department. Where are people located?
So the tricky bit that we had with this was the finance for the posts came from primary care funding, so they had to be predominantly working within the GP practice. I was able to argue a case that that they would be more effective practitioners if they had a MSK caseload as well. So anybody that is over half time, I ask them to do some hours within the core MSK service. Now, I really kind of keep that a bit flexible, because some people like to do a few hours, some people like to do a lot of hours. So I try and meet the needs of the staff and not go in with a one-size-fits-all for that.
Okay. I think also to do the FCP role full time would be hard going, absolutely. So I think if you're certainly a full-time worker, then yeah, I can't imagine doing it full time. I think you definitely need some sort of, you know, something else to job, and doing your kind of usual traditional physio patients is definitely a good balance.
Okay, that's great, thanks. And then, as well as funding, here's another one that I know comes up a lot when we're talking about this in England, and it's insurance. Does routine physiotherapy insurance cover the role? Is there an extended policy? How does the insurance around this work?
I have absolutely no idea. We are covered by insurance with an NHS Lothian, and we haven't had to make any additional insurance changes. We don't need to have separate insurance, and we are covered by NHS Lothian with that, because we're not breaching any of their care policies or procedures or anything like that. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but that's the best I've got, I'm afraid.
Okay, so I think we've covered most of the questions that have come in so far. I had one that I was interested in your mention about looking to work with community exercise programs. So in England, there's a lot of focus on introducing social prescribing. There's a lot of focus on trying to get people into this sort of thing. Can you say a bit more about that, why you think that's important, how you go about it?
Yeah, I think we ultimately do need to demedicalise a lot of things that have been medicalised over the years. And as soon as you put anything into a health setting, then you are putting a slightly different label onto it. Now, one of the beauties of health and social care integration is that all leisure facilities, all council facilities now sit under our health and social care partnership. So it's much to be able to jump through some of the loops that we've had in the past. So I am allowed to book time within the council gyms now that perhaps wouldn't have been able to do before. So we're looking at really making sure that our exercise specialist is not working purely in the healthcare setting, but actually is doing some work within the council-based gyms as well, and within the community-based facilities, so that we can hopefully stop people even entering the healthcare system.
Now that's interesting about the way that integration has brought in more than just the social care aspect of local authorities. And just for people to be aware, this is an issue that ARMA is quite interested in, and in a couple of weeks' time we have a couple of webinars which are actually aimed at the fitness and sport and leisure industry, talking about what you need to know about MSK, and both in terms of people generally taking part in your activities and also specific things like escape pain, a good boost that you might be able to put on in your gym or swimming pool. So if anyone on the call knows people in that industry, they would like to hear that stuff. We've got quite a lot of local authority leisure services signed up. So just be aware of those, and you can encourage people to sign up. They're definitely not aimed at physios. I don't think physios will learn very much from them. They are aimed at people who are working in gyms and swimming pools and leisure services. But that is definitely something that I think we're interested in. And in England, the whole emphasis on social prescribing is growing. I think we have come to the end of both our time and our questions. So thank you very much to everyone for taking part. Everyone who has signed up will be sent a link to the webinar, and we'll include links to some of the resources that have been mentioned, and also for people who want to promote our other webinars, there'll be a link to our webinar page. So thank you all very much for joining us, and we will let you all know when the recording is available.